tuning in from across the country and across the world. So welcome to all of those that have jumped on and at different times of day and night. Also, I'd like to give a thank you to the Manor House that with Bob and community partners, we all come together to offer this community education presentation on a monthly basis, and they're free. And we hope it's a good opportunity and a place to come to learn about mental health topics. I'm Maria Tholter. I'm an outreach specialist at the Lindner Center of Hope. So I go out and grow the awareness for all the treatment that we do at the Lindner Center. Across the globe here, we're in Mason, Ohio, north of downtown Cincinnati. The Lindner Center is in Mason. And just to give you an overview of all that we do at the Lindner Center, we have 80 beds there, and we have a full continuum of treatment offering. And what that looks like would be for inpatient, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient for addiction and co-occurring. We have a full outpatient practice. We also have eating disorders continuum of care, which includes inpatient, partial hospitalization, IOP, and the Harold C. Schott Eating Disorders team. We also do have a neuromodulation center where we can do, it's for treatment-resistant depression, and we work with electroconvulsive therapy and TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. We also have 2 units for residential. One is a stabilizing unit where folks come and we can do detox, medication management, and an evaluation to see what could be underlying. As well, we have another unit called Sipsy House where folks come and we surround the individual with a team and we tease out what's going on. We surround them with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, and we really want to create a blueprint about what's going on. They may have had diagnosis before, they may not have. Locally, we do offer something that's called rapid access service. If someone is really needing psychiatry and not able to get into one soon enough, and we really don't want them to decompensate, rapid access is available 2 afternoons a week. They can call, make an appointment, and we can get them in they'll meet with a psychiatrist and a social worker and have a full assessment. They can come back 3 times, and but we would hope we can help them get to a psychiatrist. So it's more rapid access. It's not the ongoing psychiatrist, but it was created to bridge the gap. But we work with OCD, we work with addiction, and of course, all levels of mental health. So if I can help you, if you need anything ever, my card is on the table. There's materials on the table about some of everything I've just shared. And also our next community education will be coming up in October. Well, here at the Manor House in October. September will be at the Countryside Y. So be sure to check the flyer. That's kind of a quick overview. So you can hear we do a lot at the Lindner Center, but thanks for being here. And I will turn it over to Dr. Allison Mecca. She is a staff psychologist. She works with also the eating disorders team she's a part of at the Lindner Center. She also is the director of the Radically Open Dialectical Behavioral Therapy treatment, and that's something that a lot of what she's going to talk about is based on tonight. So it's going to be a great opportunity to learn. And one last housekeeping would be, let's be sure to hold our questions for the end, and that way we'll grab them off the Zoom, and then we'll take them in person as well at the end of the presentation. So I give you Dr. Allison Mecca.
Can everyone hear me okay in the room? I know I'm mic'd up here, but I think that's the computer. I have my phone with me, and that's just to help me with time, because you guys will soon learn the 2 overarching styles of coping that have a lot to do with how we navigate the world. And I lean a little bit more on the under controlled side, so I can be a little not pay attention to details, get caught up, be a big hand talker. So this is going to help me stay attentive to the time. So again, today we are going to be talking about this concept of radical openness. And really, this is our pathway to well-being by connecting us to other people and ultimately enhancing that sense of human to human and emotional connection within ourselves. So this is what we'll be going over today. Again, we'll be discussing the two overarching styles of coping, and these are based on our temperaments. So how we were born before we even came into this world, how our brain was wired, and then how the experiences that we've had throughout our life have shaped the way that we behave and the way that we cope. We will be exploring how mainly the over-controlled style of coping, how it can be maladaptive and contribute to a lot of the pain that we have in our life. Then we're going to talk about some strategies. I'm going to give you guys lots to think about and lots to do around how can we work towards more radical openness, which can bring us back to this kind of wholehearted human connection to ourselves and to other people. So again, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today comes from this radically open dialectical behavior therapy. It's a little bit of a mouthful. Some people might be familiar with just DBT or dialectical behavior therapy. We offer that as well at the Lindner Center. But traditionally, DBT and some other behavioral therapies that we're used to seeing in hospitals and across different therapeutic modalities, not all of them, but a lot of them are really focused on helping people be able to regulate their emotions and to learn how to tolerate more distress. And that can be a really great thing for a lot of people to learn. But for some people, like we'll talk about today, they don't actually need to learn how to try harder, how to be better, how to regulate more. Their main concern actually might be is that they keep everything too tight. They might struggle with openness, they might struggle with vulnerability, and maybe they walk through life feeling like they have to mask or feeling like they have to be perfect. So again, they don't need to learn how to problem solve and tolerate and regulate. They actually have to learn how to maybe be a little bit more flexible, take life less seriously, and just be more open and vulnerable. Okay, so again, we have these two overarching styles of coping. On one end of the spectrum, we have individuals who are more under controlled, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have individuals who are more over controlled. Okay, and again, these coping styles can be identified in early childhood and follow us throughout our life. So again, these are temperaments. It's how our biology, just our fallback when we're in a situation, kind of what our biology and how our mind is going to respond. Okay, so the first group, both as children and adults, can be described as being dramatic and impulsive, disobedient, erratic, chaotic, and unable to delay gratification. So I want you to just take a moment and think about, does this describe me? Did this describe me as a child? Can I feel chaotic and volatile at times? Do you like to stand out in a crowd, make a lot of noise, have others maybe describe you as being out of control? Maybe perhaps you lean the other way. Okay, and this other group of people is more cautious, reserved. As a child, they may have described as being shy. They tend to control or hide their emotions, tend to be organized, structured, conscientious, perhaps maybe too much. Okay, so ask yourself, does this describe me? Do you feel like you try to do things properly and in order? Are you a rule follower? Do you describe yourself or do other people describe you as being perfectionistic? Maybe are you slow to warm up to other people? Okay. So we're starting to identify under control coping, that first descriptors I gave you, the more chaotic, more volatile. And then over-controlled copers, right, tend to be more cautious, reserved, okay? So it's gonna be really important when it comes to figuring out, okay, all of us have our stuff. We are human beings. We are flawed, we are imperfect, we're messy, we make mistakes. Okay, so all of us have our own growth process that we're working on. And it's important to understand what way might I lean? Because that's going to influence how I'm going to try to shift to approach the world. All right. And really, regardless of our coping style, we as humans survive because of our ability to express and have emotions and to connect with other people. Okay, so we're not the fastest, we're not the strongest species, right? But yet we dominate the animal kingdom. And why that is that we came together as humans. We had to say, I can't do this on my own. I'm not strong enough. We had to be willing to openly reveal. So at the heart of it, we actually think research actually shows that feeling connected to people, right? Not just having people around me, right? Not just even having a spouse or group of friends, but feeling this mutual desire to support each other, willingness to trust each other. When we have that, that's really going to support our emotional well-being. So again, regardless of what coping style we might lean towards, all the things that we're going to be talking about today are still going to be helpful for us, even if we identify as being more under controlled. But for those of us who maybe identify as being more over controlled, right, this is going to be the really important things that we need to be paying attention to. And maybe we need to let go of some of the coping techniques that we use that say problem solve, do it all, stay till the very last email is completed, right? Pretend everything is fine with your family. Chances are, if you're doing a lot of these things, you might be feeling depressed and anxious. You may have tried lots of different therapy and nothing's really working. So again, a lot of what we're talking about today comes from this radically open dialectical behavior therapy treatment. It's actually a relatively new treatment. And it's based on many years of research. It's based on some of the fundamentals of traditional DBT that's been around since the 80s. But this treatment was specifically designed to support individuals who, again, have been going through therapy, and yet they never seem to quite get to the core. All right. So with your PowerPoints, you also got a word pairs list that looks like this, okay? So this is just a very face value screen. It's not diagnostic, but you're gonna complete it by looking at each row and what word do I think describes me, okay? And we wanna fill it out based on who we are, not how we wish we were or how we think we should be. If you're having a hard time deciding between the two, maybe think of how would people describe me as a child, okay? So I saw some people working on it already. If you haven't done that, go ahead and take a moment or two to complete it. I'm gonna keep talking as you guys do that, just so we get through all the material. But for those who have completed this, again, we've talked about over-controlled style coping and under-controlled style coping. What do you think column A describes? What temperament? Start it out. Under control. Yep. So A, if you checked more boxes in A, you likely lean more under controlled. If you check more boxes in B, you likely lean more over control. Again, this is not diagnostic, and our temperaments are not diagnoses. Okay, so we're not saying you have this problem and you have this problem. But what we can find is that our temperament will then influence us to cope in problematic ways. So if anyone's willing to practice vulnerability, which there might be a little bit more of it as the session goes on, you don't have to raise your hands, but in the interest of practicing radical openness, how many people feel like A describes them? And I know, again, not everyone is done. If you haven't completed the assessment yet, but based on our conversation thus far, you have an idea, you can include that data as well. What about column B? Okay, all right. Thank you all for being here. You're in the right spot, okay? So this is a measure, again, you have a copy of it. Share it with your friends and family. It's something that you guys can use. You don't need to be a psychologist or anything like that to use this, but it can just be helpful to get an understanding.
That's surprising. You, I mean, were you expecting, I was expecting this, I don't know why, that Looks like all of us work, right?
Well, you know, you lovely people show up on a Wednesday at 6 o'clock to see me, you know, something about I want to learn. I don't know. I think maybe the title of this talk maybe spoke to you a little bit. So that was kind of my guess. Yeah. Okay. So a little more about these biotemperaments. So these are different dimensions that we see, or different dimensions that look different based on our temperament. Okay, and we're gonna break down each one, okay? So just so you guys really have a clear understanding of what these look like. Okay, so in terms of threat sensitivity, so someone who is more over controlled, right, is gonna walk into a rose garden, be careful of the thorns, they're gonna get you, right? For someone who is more under controlled, runs through and touches them and like comes out with their arm bleeding, okay? So individuals who are more over controlled tend to be more threat sensitive, meaning that they walk around in their world assuming threat, right? That person didn't look at me in the hallway, they must be mad at me. We'll look at this presentation and you'll find the misspelling and, oh, is that person really an expert? I saw that misspelled word, which also speaks to some of the other tenets that we'll talk about. Again, for someone who is more under controlled, isn't gonna really, maybe might approach life more impulsively and not consider enough of the consequences. Okay, in terms of reward sensitivity, all right, someone who is more over controlled generally isn't as excitable, okay? Or it might take them a lot to get excited. Or they might work really hard at something, get an award at work, get the A, finish the project, and okay, on to the next, right? That's what I'm just supposed to do. Versus someone who is more under controlled is going to get really excited, right? I completed this project, let's throw a party and woohoo, I'm going to wait a while until I do the next one. Right, so we got our little Ron Swanson and our Leslie Knope for anyone who watched Parks and Rec. Looking at inhibitory control, which is a big part of this as well. Someone who is more over controlled has high inhibitory control, meaning they have an ability to withhold their urges and their emotions. Okay. If there is a bowl of M&Ms put on the table for me, oh my Lord, I cannot resist those M&Ms, right? I don't have as much inhibitory control. I like M&Ms, I'm gonna go for that. Versus someone who's more over controlled can tolerate a lot. They can inhibit their emotions and their urges more easily. Attention to detail. I referenced a little bit of this earlier. Someone who is more over controlled tends to focus on the details of things, right? They're going to break things down, look at all the specific tasks, and really get caught up in the details. Versus someone who is more under controlled is going to see more the big picture, right? And they might actually miss some important details. And then second to lastly, in terms of novelty seeking, so seeking out new and different, potentially exciting experiences, someone who is over controlled is going to be a lot more cautious because generally, well, I don't know what to expect. Am I going to be good at it? Am I going to look silly doing it? So we might be less likely to do new things. We might still do things that look exciting. Someone who's over controlled might still go skydiving, right? But ultimately, they're going to have this plan in their mind. They're going to be aware of each step of the way, and then they'll do it. Versus someone who is more under control. You want to go skydiving? Sure, why not? Right? They're not going to think through things as threatening. And then lastly, we got distress tolerance. Okay, so someone who is more over controlled in general can take a lot, right? They can work the long hours. They can carry the load for the family, right? They can do it while looking like they're still okay and smiling. Look calm, cool, collected on the surface, whereas probably in the inside, they are probably actually really freaking out, but we're probably not going to see it. And then again, someone who is more under controlled, they have a hard time tolerating distress. Oh, you're asking me to, sit here for 5 minutes and sit quietly, or I'm sitting here in traffic and this was me on my way up. 5 minutes in traffic? Are you kidding? Right? I couldn't tolerate it. All right. And so again, we're not saying that either of these are better or worse. They're just kind of how we are. And thinking through these things, again, maybe think about you and your life and how you navigate your life. And for you, are there times when this really serves you? Right? Ultimately, individuals who function in a more over-controlled way, they really help our society evolve, right? They really care. They're willing to persist. They can approach a project and figure out where's the flaw, right? They work really hard and they're going to keep going. So there are a lot of really positive attributes that each of these temperaments have that really serve them. But on the flip side of it, consistently engaging with the world as if it's threatening, getting so caught up in the details, never trying something new, right? Not being able to take a step back and reward ourselves or acknowledge the progress that we we've accomplished, continuing to feel like we have to strive and tolerate and inhibit, right? We as humans are, again, just that, humans. Over time, that's going to compound into a lot of suffering and a lot of loneliness. Okay, so here's a little graph of kind of how all of this works together. So we just went through the nature component. Okay, so biologically, all of that is just how our brain sees the world. And then we're influenced by the environment and the experiences that we have. Okay, so picture a person, right, who doesn't get very excited by things, kind of is always aware of what's wrong or what am I doing wrongly. You know, typically can do really good at things, inhibit, high attention to detail. And then say they grew up in an environment where it was really reinforced that self-control is good. Okay, or that mistakes are intolerable, right? Or never let them see you sweat. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. All right, you have to always be prepared. Maybe an environment that really reinforced winning or achieving. Or this environment where it was perceived as being weak to show your emotions. All right, and a lot of these don't have to necessarily be direct messages from our family, right? But if in general we had a family who kind of was always involved, right? Who got really excited when I got A's. You know, who ultimately, there weren't a lot of emotion showed in our family. We talked about things, but you know, when it came to the hard stuff, we didn't really talk about it. Okay, so think of someone then with that biology in that environment, they're going to start to cope in ways where they mask their true inner feelings. So they might be talkative, they might be outgoing. That has nothing to do with over-controlled coping, right? I can control what I tell you. I can talk to you all day long, but you're not going to know that shame that I felt, right? When my boss called me out, or they're not going to know the sadness that I feel when I come home, even though I just spent time with my family or friends. Okay. We're going to compulsively strive. All right. The more that I achieve, the more that I produce, the better I do at work, the more that I give, then I will feel better. Sometimes we avoid things in life. We avoid engaging in life because I don't want to look silly. What if I can't do it well? I don't know what's going to happen. Again, we start to put ourselves maybe in situations that we should maybe avoid, where we should say, this is too much. I'm only one person. I can't do it all. So maybe we walk around carrying the burden of not just us, but the people that we care about. And then maybe we start to even intentionally or unintentionally disengage or disconnect with other people. So some of this stuff, again, might not necessarily be this conscious awareness. But typically, if we're holding a lot internally, we in general kind of keep going, we're going to become a human who's suffering on the inside, and it's going to start to show. Right? I might be out with friends, everyone's laughing and having a good time, right? And I'm just kind of sitting there. Or I might get feedback from people, you know, that you have a really stern face, and we're just like, I just feel like I'm sitting here, right? So in general, individuals who are more over controlled are less expressive, And when we are less expressive, it's actually perceived as a danger signal by other people, right? And again, we might not be intentionally, trying to not be open, right? But, I love my husband to death and he knows I bring him up a lot. I'll come home and be like, oh my goodness, this was my day and I can't believe that. Or, oh, it was such a challenging day. And kind of his look and his response, regardless if it was an exciting day or a challenging day, is, oh gosh, yeah. Oh, what an exciting day for you, right? And again, he's probably excited for me and he probably feels for me, but his social signals are naturally also inhibited because his biotemperament's inhibited. And in general, how he gets through life is by full steam ahead, regardless of inside, I feel like I'm just melting. So this kind of gets into the importance. This gets into the importance of nonverbal social signaling. So again, it's important to acknowledge that high self-control and is a good thing. It helps our society, move forward. We really care about things. But again, we maybe engage with the world in a way where we don't take risks, so we don't make a mistake. We might learn to avoid showing vulnerability, even more in distress, in order to avoid appearing out of control. We might mask our inner feelings or keep a poker face. Okay, so that might feel like, okay, this helps me, right? This helps me, like, I don't want to put this burden on other people, right? I'm the caretaker, or I'm the one who's always supposed to even be in a good mood. I don't want to bring this into them. So we feel like we're helping ourselves and other people, but research shows that when we hide our feelings, right, when we inhibit in this way and don't express our emotions, we actually feel more socially ostracized. Okay, so there was a research experiment that was done, and there were two research subjects, a man and a woman. They were asked to watch a movie together. The movie was full of fun, sad, scary, disgusting pictures, sounds, dialogue, all that. After the movie, both were taken into another room, seated at a table directly across from each other. They both were handed handwritten instructions and told to read them silently while being careful not to let the other person know what the instructions said. Okay. Blood pressure cuff was applied to both of their arms. The man's instructions said that he was to express his emotions, feelings about the movie just as he normally would. The woman's instructions were to verbally express her thoughts and emotions about the movie, but to not show any expression of emotion on her face. Okay, and again, neither of them knew what they were being told to do, so they were just interacting with each other as they thought they normally would. Okay, so what do we think researchers discovered? So what they found is that the blood pressure went up for the woman who was told to suppress her emotions. Okay, but so did the blood pressure of the man that she was talking to. So an increase in blood pressure means that the body is feeling threatened, right? Fight or flight response. So even when being told, right, you're telling me to do this, the body responded negatively to the suppressed emotions. And the person who interacted with someone who suppressed their emotions also felt really uncomfortable. Okay, and then this experiment was repeated. And when they asked the person who was, the more expressive one, would you want to spend more time with that other person, the one who wasn't as expressive? Almost all of them said, no, I wouldn't want to spend more time with them. Okay. So again, a lot of us might feel like suppressing our emotions, which can also look like, yeah, I'm good. Oh yeah, my world's falling apart, but it's fine. We're good. Right. It also can look like, yeah, Steven Spielberg got my script, wants to make it a movie. He's sending me to LA and it's just great. How are you? That's this whole. Okay, so both of that is suppressing emotions. So what this suggests is that keeping emotional expression out of your voice and face is seen as a danger signal by others. We become anxious when we're around others who are anxious because they are suppressing an emotion, especially when free emotion would be okay. Plus, people tend to avoid people who suppress their emotions. They tend to be perceived as being untrustworthy, which then can lead to social ostracism. Okay. So again, research shows that actually open expression, vulnerability, and when I say open expression, it also means openness, vulnerability, flexibility, doing something different. Instead of making people run away, it's actually perceived as a safety signal by others. That is, we tend to trust those who freely express their emotions. Okay. So again, think about times when you've been with other people and someone starts to say, you know, everyone's like, oh yeah, I have a great life. My kids are getting married, yada, yada, yada. And then someone's like, you know what? It really sucks right now. COVID was really hard for me. I feel like I'm having to work extra hard and I'm just exhausted all the time. Me too, right? Like, thank you for saying that because I feel the same way. I feel like I have to sit up here and pretend everything's fine. Okay, so instead of pushing people away, openness and vulnerability actually brings us closer together. Okay, so what we want to do as individuals who are more over controlled, or all of us, regardless if we are over controlled or not, we want to start to take the armor off that we have, right? All the rules that we follow, all those protections that we try to put in place to make sure everyone else is okay. And we want to be able to, again, respond to the world in a more radical, open way. Okay, so I'm going to read a little story, and I want you to think about what this story might mean. Okay. All right, so there once was a man who believed no one liked him. His friend said, just go to the village and spend time in the square. You will see that none avoid you. The man said, you don't understand. People really hate me. They look at me as if something is wrong with me. I don't see how this would work. Eventually, his friend convinced him to try, and so he did. The next week, his friend asked how to go at the village. The man replied, I did just as you said. I went to the village with my 3 hunting dogs, restrained, of course, my shield on my back and my sword in my belt. You can never be too cautious. What might you think happened? The mothers in the village picked up their children and took them inside. The fathers glared at me in contempt, and not a soul came to speak to me on the bench that I sat on in the center of the square. Any thoughts to what the moral of the story is? Okay. So whether we know it or not, sometimes it's intentional, a lot of times it's actually unintentional. We might be carrying with us these hunting dogs, swords and shields, right? There might be certain things that we do that we think help regulate us and make us feel better about engaging in the world, when really it's possible that we are facilitating our own loneliness. And so again, just a private question for yourself. Think about what might be some of your own hunting dogs, swords, and shields. All right, so I got to this earlier. All right, now that I'm like, well, okay, you're calling me out, what do I do? Well, what we do is we work towards open expression. We work towards radical openness, okay? So this really is the equation, the mechanism of change. It's this easy, everyone. That's all you have to do. Easier said than done, okay? So open expression, all right? Open expression means revealing ourselves to other people, letting people really know us, right? It means joining with life, even if it feels really uncomfortable or we haven't done it before. It means telling people how we really feel. Maybe it means saying no to another ask at work, okay? But ultimately allowing ourselves to connect with our messy, emotional human selves. And when we do this, again, we're perceived as being more trustworthy, all right? Because again, we as humans, because we survived ultimately working together, we're excellent social safety detectors, okay? So again, both consciously and unconsciously, right? If I walk into a room, I'm naturally gonna be paying attention to kind of what are people's responses, okay? And if I see some people with a straight face, or I see people checking the time, right? My mind is naturally gonna pick up on that, and I'm gonna start to feel threatened. And that person might be thinking this is the best talk ever, which I'm sure you are out there, right? And what you're signaling to me, right, is that this isn't important, right? And it's gonna make it really hard for me, right, afterwards to be like, oh, hey, hi, how are you? Did you enjoy the talk? I might be like, oh, let's go to that person, okay? So when we openly express, right, we create trust. When that trust is there, right, I feel more socially connected. Me and my husband are both really great at pretending the world's okay. The first 3 years of our relationship, you know, we did a lot of that. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I think I don't know. Right. And I wanted to be this cool, calm, collected chick, right? Go with the flow. And then one day he gave me feedback. He's like, you're like fun and all, but like, I don't feel like I know you. Like, I don't feel like you can come to me with stuff. And I want you to be able to do that, right? Isn't that what a relationship is? We're not signing up for just the rainbows. We're not signing up for what it looks like on Facebook, right? Like, we're signing up for marriage or connection or friendship. And we're two people who think differently, who act differently, who have different world experiences. So it's gonna be hard, right? But that trust of, I can come to you when I'm angry, right? I can come to you when I'm sad, right? And it's not just that you have trust of, oh, this person will be my friend, or they won't, you know, cheat on me or whatnot. It's trusting, allowing ourselves to trust in our own humanness and to show that to another person. And when we do that, that is what enhances our well-being. Okay, so again, this approach is really challenging us to shift our perspective of how we cope and shift our perspective of the world, to lean a little bit more into this open expression. And when we do that, research shows that we only need one kind of deeply connected, trusting relationship to get the benefits of this. Okay, so this chat that we're having isn't about, okay, everyone has to go out and be outgoing and throw caution to the wind and ride roller coasters and tell everyone your life story. What we're saying is, think about some of the most important relationships in your life, right? And is it possible I can give a little bit more, right? Is it possible I can lean in a little bit more to the discomfort, right? In order to let myself be seen and heard, and also to allow that other person then to be seen and heard. So yeah, this further highlights what we've been talking about. So, you know, if we're functioning on this left side, if we're approaching the world in a more inhibited way, with frozen or masked inner feelings, others are going to perceive us as untrustworthy, stilted, or inauthentic, right? When we're perceived that way, people might not want to be around us, or we might find it hard to be around people. We feel socially ostracized, and when we're feeling socially ostracized, we're more likely to feel depressed or anxious. And then we continue this cycle thinking that that's gonna, you know, help us. Instead, radical openness means that open expression and self-disclosure. When we do that, we're perceived as being trustworthy and genuine. When we're being perceived as trustworthy and genuine, people are gonna feel more comfortable, right? They're gonna reveal themselves, they're gonna feel connected to us, we're gonna feel more socially connected. And when we feel socially connected, again, because our biology is designed to operate and thrive in groups, in societies, right? When we feel outgrouped, that's really painful. So feeling a part of the group, right? Again, that's really going to support our emotional well-being from the outside in, from the inside out. That's one. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff. Let me check my time. Wow, I'm doing good. Okay, wow, look at me. Okay, so, all right, I'm asking you to be radically open. I'm asking you to practice self-disclosure and vulnerability. I'm asking you to, you know, go out to ice cream, even though it's a Tuesday night, and we don't do ice cream on Tuesday nights, right? I'm asking you to lean into that radical openness, and that's likely going to be hard for you, right? Because your biology says to inhibit. Your biology says, that's threatening. There are some strategies that we can use to help our biology feel more safe, Okay, so RODBT says instead of thinking our way out of something, which individuals who are over controlled are really good at thinking. Instead of thinking our way out of something, we're gonna try to be our way out of something. So remember our thoughts, our emotion, you know, our body, it's all connected, okay? And so if we can change our body to appear more open, that's gonna send a signal back to my brain that says you are safe, okay? So if I'm coming up here, right, and I'm talking to a room full of people, and before I come in, I'm sitting on the chair. Oh gosh, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I can't do this, right? My body language is signaling to my brain, you can't do this, right? You need to fight these people when they come in, or you need to run away. So I'm reinforcing a threatened mind state. So in order to, again, try to create some more openness in our biology, so I can do that hard thing of going to my partner and saying, actually, I was really angry with you when you did that, right? Or I'm trying to go hang out with my friends, even though it's a Tuesday night and I got a lot of work to do, but I'm really trying to focus on enhancing my friendships. Again, I might not want to do that. So again, let me try to activate some safety in my body to give me some momentum, all right? So we teach this actually in the RODBT skills class that we offer at Lindner. Swipe that for a little bit. We have an RODBT program, which is for the most part an individual skills class where a lot of stuff that we're talking about today is talked about. And we teach this in that class. So it's called the Big 3+1. But essentially what that means is, again, in any given moment, we can do this. If we're aware of feeling threatened, right, our body's telling us I'm uncomfortable, my body's saying inhibit, my body's saying don't do that thing, but my values tell me I should. Let's see if we can change our body a little bit, okay? So if we're in a chair, and I'll have you all do this, you're in a chair. We're gonna lean back in our chair a little bit, right? Pretend you're comfortable. You're not at the manor house with me. You're at, you know, you're in your living room being comfortable, sit back. All right, sometimes we can put our arm up right next to us. Sometimes we can like wrap our arms around the back of our seats. Okay, lean back, open, easy posture. All right. And then we're gonna do something called a closed mouth cooperative smile. Okay, so again, sometimes we just have a resting face. A lot of us probably carry a lot of tension in our face. So we're just gonna, if anyone is old enough for, I don't know, like the TV show, America's Next Top Model, Tyra Banks did something like a smile, so smile with your eyes. Okay, so we're going to imagine ourselves smiling with our eyes and let the corners of our mouth just barely turn upward. So it's not a fake smile where we're like, yay, everything's okay and good, right? It's just a. Does everyone try that, right? Other people might not be like, oh, you're smiling, right? But allow yourself to think about, I'm gonna just smile a little bit with my mouth closed, okay? And then maybe allow yourself to take a slow, deep breath, kind of like into a sigh of contentment. And then we're just going to be aware of where our eyebrows are. We're just going to kind of think about, all right, there are my eyebrows. It's okay if they lift a little bit. Maybe I can't really do this. Maybe I give them a little wiggle. Okay, something called an eyebrow wag. We're loosening the facial muscles. We have so many different muscles in our face that are involved in expression. And just by thinking about our eyebrows, we're probably more likely to release some of that tension. Okay, so since we have time for it, I'm gonna have you guys, probably just with the people at your table, I'm gonna have you pretend that you're at the airport and you guys are BFFs and oh my goodness, we're both in Atlanta at the same time. Like, what are the chances, okay? So I want you to greet the people at your table or your partner, whoever you came with, or if you didn't come with someone, find a buddy. Greet them as you just typically would. Okay, again, this person, what are the chances I ran into you? All right, so go ahead and go. Greet your person as if you're seeing them. All right. So what did we notice? What happened with your tone of voice? What happened with your expression? I heard it got louder, higher, louder. Yeah, I saw a lot of smiles. I heard some laughter. And of course, you know, it's a cellular exercise that we're doing right now. Okay, so now I want you to do the same thing, same situation, but don't move your eyebrows. Okay, same situation, do not move your eyebrows. Go ahead. All right. What did we notice there? Hard, yeah, hard not to move the eyebrows, maybe a little funny. Stiff, yep, you guys were a little quieter. I noticed that my tone of voice becomes more monotone a little bit. I don't have as much of that inflection. Okay, so this is just a little exercise again to demonstrate how important expression is. And even if we're just kind of thinking this idea of, well, I don't want to be too much, or I don't want to express my emotion to this person, or even if our biology just typically isn't very expressive in our face, it's likely, again, going to decrease our pro-social signaling, right? And again, thinking about, was that person really excited to see me, right? Think if you were going in like, hey, how are you? And the other person's like, oh my goodness, I am so excited. I can't believe we ran into each other, right? You'd be like, are you excited? Right? So again, we might walk through life not knowing how our face is, and that's one of the things that RODT helps us be more aware of, right? But we might unknowingly be making people feel really uncomfortable, right? Or make people question, do you like me or not? And again, you know, just human biology, you know, when we think about how we interact with babies, right? Normally it's more of a sing-songy voice. We normally react to them, right? We might mirror them and what they're doing. There's actually this video out there that, you know, the mom's doing that and the kid's having a good time as the mom's mirroring and, hi, how are you? Oh, yeah. Right, and then the mom just stops and kind of just looks at the baby like this. And the kid starts to kind of like, see that, and trying really hard to get the mom to react. Then it starts like screeching and like trying to get out of the chair. Okay, so biologically, that baby was starting to feel threat, right? With just 10 seconds of the mom not revealing. And that doesn't go away in our biology. And again, we're talking a lot about some of this like facial expression and like minute social signaling. But the same thing can be said for our compulsive striving. The same thing can be said for not being flexible or joining with life, right? Especially when life calls for it and needs it. And all of this is context, relationship dependent. Again, I don't want you guys to leave here thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad and I have to go like be a maniac out there, right? No, I want you to think about the important relationships in your life. And is it possible you are putting threatening signals out there unknowingly? With what you know about yourself, and I encourage you to use what we've talked about today to dive a little deeper, right? Is there room for me to step into that challenge, right? Or be a little bit more open? Okay. Another thing that we talk about in RO and another facet of radical openness is understanding our own perception of the world. Okay, so I have this ink blot up here. So I just want you to take a moment and what do you see in this ink blot? Okay, and if you feel comfortable, feel free to shout it out. What do we see when we look at the tablecloth?
Two women dancing.
Two women dancing,
Two happy dogs.
two happy dogs. A butterfly,
See chickens.
chickens. Okay, who's right? Smart audience. All right. So again, one of the things that can show up for us, when we are a little bit more controlled or not so radically open, is that we can become really set on our way of seeing the world, right? Or this is the right way to do things. And again, think about if I were to sit up here and for the rest of our time together, argue with you about who was right and wrong. Okay, chances are you probably wouldn't feel very connected to me, right? So think about, okay, how often in my life do I become so stubborn on my worldview, on my perspective? And I'm unwilling to maybe look at things from a different perspective. Okay, so radical openness begins by acknowledging all of us have different brains, thus we all carry with us perceptual biases. Okay, so I went to school forever, and one of the things that we studied was the Rorschach, which is what this comes from. You know, you ask people that tell you what you see, and then you like examine that response and how it relates to their personality, right? So I might look at this and think, oh, that's card number 1 on the Rorschach, right? Maybe someone out there is a brain surgeon or a nurse and does a lot of MRI scans. Oh, that looks like a brain, right? Maybe you're someone who loves to be out in nature. Oh, I see a butterfly. Okay, so based on, again, our experiences, we're all gonna see the world differently. And there are so many stimuli out there. And again, we all pick up on different things, especially if we're detailed focused, right? There are so many things in this room right now that we could possibly pay attention to. And each of your brains are going to choose what you pay attention to. Thus, all of us are going to have a different version of reality tonight. And if we become so stuck on our version of reality, being the one and only version, again, that's going to create a lot of disconnect in our life. That's going to contribute to the loneliness that we feel. So we say this a lot in our DBT, that we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So with radical openness is that willingness to see things from other perspectives. It's not saying that other perspective is right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. It's possible that, yeah, okay, I can see things from your perspective, and this is my perspective. Let's say something else. Okay. So again, we're talking about open expression, we're talking about openly revealing, we're talking about acknowledging that we all see the world differently, right? We're allowing ourselves to understand what my perception is and what might be the other person's perception. And then another part of RO, or radical openness, is flexibly participating in life. Okay, so again, I've kind of brought this concept up a lot already, but because of the way that we cope, sometimes, right, we might feel like a bystander in our own life, right? Or we might not feel like life is that exciting. Or we might feel like life is passing us by, or that life is just a series of responding to emails and project deadlines, okay? So that is great if that stuff makes you happy, right? And it can make you happy and have a life that is very fulfilling. And it's also possible if maybe you're not feeling so fulfilled, right? That I'm not actually engaged with the living part of life. Okay, so radical openness invites us to flexibly participate in life, passionately participate in one's life and in one's community. We want to let go of compulsive planning, rehearsal, or obsessive needs to get it right. And ultimately want to take life less seriously. Okay, so yes, like people age and we have to manage health concerns, and we have to get to school and work while taking the kids to school. We have to figure out what we're going to do for dinner tonight, right? There are a lot of things that we have to pay attention to, and we have to, right? There's a lot of responsibilities that, just as human adults and humans, we have to attend to. But is it possible sometimes that we take things too seriously? Right? Okay. Yep, supposed to normally make dinner at home on Tuesdays, but I'm not getting home until 8. Whatever, I'll pick up Skyline on the way home. Okay. Where can I, again, loosen that grip a little bit that I might have on myself, that I might have on others, that I might have on the world? So sometimes, the over control perspective can show up as like bitterness and cynicism. Life sucks and then you die. All right, all I do is sit in traffic for 2 hours a day to come home to crying babies, just do it all again the next day, right? So even just our perspective of life in that way is probably gonna make living life a little bit difficult. Okay, so then where can I take life a little seriously? Where can I lean in a little bit to the joy? And that still might feel uncomfortable for us. One of the things that we talk about in RO is that we actually want to move towards the discomfort and not away. Because a lot of times, again, we are overly problem solving. We don't want to feel discomfort, right? So we protect ourselves against all odds. We strive against all odds. And we don't really like to feel the stuff in here. I don't want to pay attention to that emotion. I don't want to like dig into that. So I'm just going to put a happy face on and pretend everything's okay. Right? And again, that might feel like it's working for us, but when you really think about your experience in life, you know, are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling disconnected? Do you feel like you're really living life in line with your values, or are you living life in line with rules? Okay, so we're gonna practice this a little bit. Let's see if I can follow Maria's instructions now that I've talked forever. All right, I hit escape. And then I go here. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you all to stand up. It's been a long evening. We've been sitting for a while. I encourage radical openness, but also respect your own boundaries right now. We are all going to do the chicken dance, okay? I'm gonna come right back here so that people on screen can see me. Oh gosh, I hope I remember. All right, you can all sit down. Give yourself a round of applause. Great job, everyone. You did it. All right, what did we observe when we did that? Hard probably for a lot of people, a little uncomfortable. Felt a little silly. Yeah, and that's to be expected. But again, we are coming together. We are a tribe in this room, right? We've been just sitting here for an hour, listening, agreeing that we're over controlled. Okay, so you allowed yourself to join the people around you, even though you felt uncomfortable, right? And you know, if only half the people in the room stood up, or only a few stood up, those people might be like, oh goodness, okay, I don't know if I want to do this, right? But we chose to all lean into the discomfort, right? To practice doing something new and novel and different. So again, we're challenging our, you know, maybe rigid ways of engaging, okay? So again, oh, my clicker. Okay, so when it comes to radical openness, I'll bring us home, okay? It means receptivity and openness to new experiences and just confirming feedback in order to learn. So that kind of connects us back to that ink blot thing, okay? So, you know, being open to someone giving you information that might be different from how you see it. Being open to engaging in new experiences. Radical openness means flexible control in order to adapt to our ever-changing world and participate in life. again, so we all have heard this before, the only constant in life is change, right? The world is always changing, right? Every single day, we wake up and we have the people around us, and we really don't know what's gonna happen. But then we try to be really structured and rule bound, and we want to be perfect, we want things to go a certain way. Okay, that's gonna cause a lot of friction. So engaging in flexible control, being willing to lean in to our own stuff, and being vulnerable and willing to focus on connection over perfection and control. Okay. So again, radical openness enhances our relationships. It enhances our well-being because it models humility, openness to other perspectives, and the willingness to learn what the world has to offer. And in turn, this is going to increase our psychological. Okay, we have some questions. Just briefly, I'm going to orient you guys to this. What I mentioned earlier, we offer RODBT skills classes at the center. We have four groups that run. 3 are in the evening, 4 to 5:30, 1 Wednesday morning, 8 to 9:30. And we also have a RODBT class for adolescents. So if you're interested, there's a flyer at the table. You can also, the number on the screen is our practice manager. And then if you want more information, we have some information on our website about RODBT. And then a lot of this content stuff, again, comes from that radically open DBT treatment. And that is the treatment developer website where they have some of the research. And then they also have a blog, which I really like, where, just normal people, not researchers, talk about how these concepts relate to their life. And I find that's a place where we can maybe hear ourselves and what's being shared.
We take most private.
Yes, and we take most private insurances and public. And yeah, okay, questions?
Can you overdo it, or is there a risk to being too open to doing maybe and then risking yourself to be too vulnerable, maybe somehow?
Yeah, so the question is, can you overdo it? Can you kind of come in too hot with openness and vulnerability? And the answer is, yeah, maybe. So we want to think of everything based on the situation, context, and the relationship. There's something that we teach in RO called the match plus one, meaning that intimacy is something that is built, connectedness is something that is built. If we are just meeting someone for the first time, probably telling them our whole life story, that's going to be perceived as a threatening signal. So it's this idea of kind of upping the ante over time, kind of slowly revealing, matching what that other person is sharing, and then kind of revealing a little bit more. We can also think about that framework in terms of chit chat. Chit chat is actually a really great relationship building thing. Most people find it uncomfortable or silly, but really it helps to create trust, right? With just talking about some of the facts of our life. And so when we're chit chatting, right, we don't want to leave someone and be like, hey, how are you? Good. What did you do this weekend? Stuff, right? We want to kind of give them a little bit to work with. Yeah. So again, we want to be mindful that we don't swing the other way, right? We kind of want to, where can I give some degree of change? There's another question over here.
Well, I just wondered, when does the alarm bell ring? I mean, do you have to be really unhappy, or someone in your family points out that you're not connecting? I appreciate this information. I think information is power, of course. But I'm like, can I just know this and keep going, or should I be alarmed and just fix myself tonight,
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, am I destined to just feel this way, or like, do I need to do something different? So in terms of the alarm bell, just pay attention to, again, one of the big things that we talk about are our value goals. So what are some of the things in your life that are really valuable and important to you? Kindness, okay? So do I feel like I am, moving towards kindness? We're not going to be kind all the time. Or are there times when like this stuff interferes with my ability to be kind, right? So if I'm finding, as much as I value kindness, right, like, I've been just too busy with this and I haven't gotten to that place that I like to volunteer, right? Or after a busy day of work, I'm kind of grumpy with the store clerk, okay? So, in ROTC, we use the language of an edge. So, internally, is there a little bit of discomfort that I'm feeling? And maybe typically we just keep doing what we're doing, but if you're feeling this sense of edge or like, eek, I feel uncomfortable, yeah, using this information, right, what you said, knowledge is power, okay? I'm gonna approach the world with a little bit more openness, meaning, okay, I'm gonna have my perspective. Next time my husband wants to tell me something, I guess I'll listen to what he has to say, right? Or maybe I have to push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone or out of my routine because I want to be able to, approach the world with more kindness. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we are all works in progress. We all have our stuff and different things, again, that we're working on. I know I started with that. And so a little bit can go a long way in terms of our well-being. So my partner, again, I told you guys early on, I am more under controlled. My partner is more over controlled. And again, it was we had a slow burn relationship, but it was just amazing. Like only that first time, right, that he kind of shared a bunch about himself. All of a sudden, my sense of connection to him went from like a 5 to like an 8, right? And I'm like, oh, there's that human. I got a little bit of it. I know that human's in there. So 1 degree of change in how we can work on this stuff, and you guys will see measurable impacts. And if you're really feeling like I really want a lot of guidance on this, I feel like I'm pretty stuck, that's when we would want you to give us a call and we'll do the best that we can to support that. Yeah.
As you were describing the types,
Mhm.
I always struggle when there's 2 options because I feel like there's
Right.
like in different, like you said, the 3 things that was helpful, the situation, context, and relationship.
Mhm.
You slide on these things, like when I was trying to answer them, I'm like, well, who are we talking about? What situation are we talking about? So is that something, like, am I thinking about that right? Like, it's not, we are under control or we are over control.
Correct.
We can be in relationships and be different situations in different ways.
Yeah, so the question is, if I can summarize it. So the question is, can our over control show up with certain relationships or in certain situations, or can we be somewhere in the middle of this idea of over controlled or under controlled? So all of us are gonna lean one way. I don't have the graphic up, but it's actually kind of like a bell curve. So correct, right? Like as I went through the more descriptors of all those pictures, some of that might not apply to you, right? You might be novelty seeking, right? You might not really pay attention to detail, but maybe you are more inhibited and threat sensitive. So not all of us are going to even be over controlled in the same way. And we might see it show up in certain relationships. And so ultimately, again, that radical open approach, okay, this isn't me being a problem. I'm learning about myself and I'm learning that this stuff really shows up in this relationship. And oftentimes the coping shows up when we might feel more threatened or when it is a new situation or there is more unknown, right? I'm starting a job or I'm just dating this person. That's when our over-controlled coping is more likely to show up. If we're in a safe and secure environment, if we're in a safe and secure relationship, we're likely able to be more expressive and to engage more in that flexible control. That's our goal, is to get to flexible control. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of hearing too is like catching when you're feeling uncomfortable and realizing that perhaps is a time when you're more likely to default into over control.
Correct, yes. So when you start to feel uncomfortable, you're going to go to your typical style of coping. And again, sometimes that can be helpful, right? That danger signal that says there's a car coming, like I'm not gonna cross the street, that protects us, right? But I'm on this first date and I feel really uncomfortable. My mind's saying, oh, just sit here, don't say anything, right? I'm actually gonna lean toward that openness. There's another skill that I had in here, but I took out. It's called self-inquiry. It's a mindfulness skill. So mindfulness is just how we attend to the world. And again, our brain impacts how we perceive the world. And so when we're feeling uncomfortable, instead of avoiding it, instead of problem solving it, instead of putting a smile on and everything's okay, what might I need to learn from this discomfort? What might this discomfort be telling me? How am I wanting to respond to this discomfort? Is responding to this discomfort in the way that my brain is telling me, is that going to move me closer or further away from my value goals? So going through that inner process, which we don't typically do, instead of, just going to whatever style of coping we typically go to in that moment. Yeah. Is there another question over here?
I just wanted to say thank you for saying that, because I'm sitting here thinking, what do you do when you look at both sides and one's 22 and one's 23? I mean, what does that mean? But now that you put it in perspective, because I just automatically said, well, I'll probably in different situations do
Right.
respond more like this than that. So I just kind of checked it off.
Yep. So for people who they may have done this and their numbers in each column may have looked pretty similar. Again, first of all, this is just one very quick measure. I would also think about how you responded to, like when I had all the pictures up, kind of where you fell there. But yeah, so, I might show up in certain ways based on certain situations. And the first time that I did this, I was about that middle two. And then when I practiced this radical openness stuff a lot, and I really let myself respond how I think I actually am, I noticed a slight change. But yeah, some of us also we might have done a lot of good work in our life already. We may have learned how to flexibly respond. And so we might see that reflected in this as well.
How long has this concept been around?
So it was created by Tom Lynch, who was the man that you saw in that black and white picture. And it's been around for about, so, how you get a research study and it says 10 years, that research study's been a few years ago. So it's been about 10 or 15 years. It came from dialectical behavior therapy, which, was created in the 80s. So it's pulled from a lot of different research. The concepts and things that we talk about, also there's a lot of overlap with other therapies and kind of other psychological concepts, that look at social signaling, that look at, kind of the function of connectedness, especially after coming out of this COVID stage. There's been a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of really great articles, talking about, the increase in mental health concerns after a period of isolation and disconnect. So relatively new in comparison to a lot of other treatments, but based on a lot of data. And there's been really great clinical outcomes that have shown it to be really effective. Again, I lead 2 traditional groups and then graduate group. And I'm not just saying this because I escaped talk from it. It's been one of the most fulfilling experiences in my life, seeing how it has impacted other people. I had a mom call me and say, I have not felt connected to my son ever. And after him going to your class, I never felt more connected, or, my marriage has improved. So it's really neat stuff. And it's stuff that we, don't normally hear in society, that values perfection, that values productivity, that can sometimes be about managing appearances. So, yeah.
I was just gonna comment, I know, thanks for that question over here, cause I can see how I've been some of the under control, but as I've gotten older, I feel like I'm over controlled. Then also I became a parent, and that's where I really started to see, because I don't feel good always, but you've got to keep your kids safe, and I got to go home and maybe give a consequence tonight, right? So that's not comfortable, and try to look at some of my own rigidity and the way maybe I was parented and things like that. But then I've started to notice more also how I feel in all of that. And then I try to step back and go, maybe I'm just, and I grew up serious, a mom that had health challenges, so I feel like I can be as serious as anybody, right? And what you say about like thinking your way through it, you know, you can figure it out, I'm rational, or, you know, we'll get through it, but I just wondered about like, as we get older, do we see more of that over control? Or does it just depends on the individual, and our own life experiences, and also this whole thought of being a little present with ourselves, that we really got to get present, but also, you know, that whole other areas of like learning who we are, our truth, bringing it to the moment, and then also, finish with this, that whole thought of like, when you're talking about learning to talk about your feelings, I feel, wait, Maria, it's not about what you think, it's what do you, let's get out of this, right, what do you feel? And so,
So Maria's commented on just a lot of how she's noticed like her evolution of coping and based on the different stages of her own life, the people that she's been around. So again, we are also influenced by people around us. So there might be some situations where if the people around us are typically open and vulnerable, we feel more open and vulnerable. Thus, in that part of my life, I'm more open and vulnerable. As we go through different stages in our life, you know, I think as we get older, it's just more time to really examine what is my felt experience based on what I feel like I should be doing. You know, I also really think we're in a great stage of awareness of mental health and really understanding that, you know, this stuff is real. And when we're just willing to acknowledge just our stuff and our humanness, again, just that shift in perspective, right? Like I'm going to approach the world today as a human, right? Like that, we talk a lot about social signals in our RDT, like my brain hearing that, instead of my brain hearing, oh, another day where I have to be perfect boss and perfect wife and perfect husband, and right, like I'm gonna approach the day with a slightly a little bit more openness. Yeah, question.
Just two things. One, just the concept of accepting humanity, your own and others, I think seems like it really applies here, and understanding that with and if there's tendencies for over control. But the other thing is, I'm just curious how people are referred or come to, like, where do your people come to this program? It seems counterintuitive to me that over control people would sign up for a class for radical openness. So
Yeah.
what does that look like?
Yeah, so first, just a piece of echoing like that importance of like approaching life with humility and humanity. Right, and that's been like a concept that I've been obsessed with lately, just like authenticity, like how cool it is, right? And you might be over there feeling like you need to do this to get by in life, but man, it feels good just to like let myself be authentic. And then like, yeah, how do people end up coming into these groups when, gosh, I'm gonna go to the Lindner Center and, you know, go to a group and talk about all of this. So it can be challenging for people to do. This is why we do things like this and why we so appreciate you guys coming out and listening to this. I think, again, a lot of people suffered a lot during the pandemic, and, you know, thanks to people like Maria, we've gotten some marketing out there. If people are previously in therapy, again, we've been trying to do a lot of education of providers to make sure people are getting to the right place, but for a long time, this group of people have been struggling in silence, or this group of people have been put in like DBT classes or been in situations where they're told to like regulate their emotions, and they come out of it and they're like, well, that wasn't really helpful. Why would I seek treatment again? So that's why we try to do a lot of education on making sure people are triaged into the right place. But it does take at first that level of openness, which is why like every time I meet with them for the first time, I thank them for coming here, right? Just being in this room, like you've already done a heck ton of work. Luckily, or I'll say luckily, like our groups are full. All my groups are full right now. So I think just the more that people do this work, the more I think they signal radical openness, and the more people find out about it.
Do you think tips for, say you are very over controlled and
Not you though, right? You're not over control, not you. Just the rest of us.
But you know, feeling
Yeah.
like burned, like, okay, I let some steam out of the bag and then you feel like very burned or like, and that didn't feel good. So now I feel like I have to over control.
Yeah. Right, so it can feel really uncomfortable, yeah, to like, all right, I'm gonna be vulnerable, I'm gonna let that steam off. And then maybe our response to it might be shame or guilt. That's another really big experience that I have talked about, but a lot of times we carry like shame and guilt or embarrassment as a huge piece for us. And so we might feel then really scary after doing that. So it's important to reward ourselves after we engage in openness. We can do some of that biological stuff here where we just work to regulate our neurobiology. So again, opening my body posture, other things like using our five senses, calming music, chewing gum or having something to eat, if that's not a trigger for us. We can't be in the fight or flight and the rest digest stage at the same time. So if we're feeling really uncomfortable after something, sitting down, eating something, chewing on gum or a mint, our body is, oh, this person's eating, right? If I'm being chased by a bear, I'm not gonna stop for lunch. But if I'm eating, right, that's a safety signal back to my brain. So we can think about some like the five senses activation and think about how can I open up my body language right now and how can I do something that is soothing for me? Or maybe I need to go spend some time alone right now, right? We don't want to overdo it, right? And be like, oh my God, that was way too scary. I've been sick for days with anxiety after having to do that. So we don't want to feel like we have to be perfect with radical openness, right? We don't want to become over controlled about being open. So, give a little bit, reward yourself, let your biology reset, allow yourself to be curious about, okay, what did it feel like? It might feel uncomfortable, but oh my goodness, it actually was a really great evening, with my partner, or I found that they opened up after I did, right? So I'm more motivated by my value of that than I am to, protect my discomfort.
A couple of questions, Doc, in the chat from people that are out in Zoom land as
Hi,
it were.
Zoomland people.
So first of all, obviously, it's harder to see when you don't have a paper copy in front of you,
Mhm.
like the folks here. Is it possible for them to email you and get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yes. Yes,
So
we
I know
definitely
that
can
you
do
had a
that.
slide in there, I think that had like your email.
Marina, what's
Bob, I can get that to you
Okay.
to put online.
Wasn't it right there?
yeah.
My cards are on paper.
Yeah, so if you're in Zoomland, you can email me and I will get that to the people who can help with that, for sure.
And then the other that goes hand in hand with that, because I didn't really look through the slide, was that it was very hard for them to see the slide with the traits as far as the over under,
The one with the word.
and they want to know if that can also get a copy.
Yep, we can
of
definitely send a copy of, sorry guys in Zoomland, you were just getting a blur on your screen. We can definitely send that as
So-
well. Yes,
Hopefully that answered all
Yeah,
the
thank you,
questions
guys.
there, as far as they can email you
yep,
and get a copy of
and
that.
they can get copies of the slides and copies of this as well, yep.
The other question that was in there, you already answered, was, is it possible to be both over,
Mhm.
under? And then there's,
I will say another quick thing about that too. For some people, we might be born more under controlled. And again, then we have all these experiences in our life that shape that. For anyone who's gone through a trauma, how trauma changes the brain, right? I was in a situation where my safety, my choice, my control was taken away, right? So naturally, life is gonna feel more scary. I have to be more cautious. I have to tread lightly. So we might start to adapt some coping that is or looks over controlled, but we also still have our, basic under controlled temperament as well. So for some people, if you have experienced a trauma, that can also be a reason why we see a little bit of a blend.
I think you just answered the last question, was with trauma. What do you do with the class?
Wow.
You're good.
I read
Oh,
minds,
you're
you
good.
know? Any other questions or?
Can this type of therapy replace or diminish the use of drugs, medications that a person is antidepressants or
So the question was, can the therapy replace, pharmaceutical intervention?
diminish the use of?
Yeah, so I personally, and I think that most of the field feels this way, we are really capable of so much. Neuroplasticity, our brains are capable of change, which is how we went from babies to humans, right? And how I can all of a sudden know this stuff that I didn't know 5 years ago or whatnot. So neuroplasticity is real. We can do things that change our brain. And we are also born with different brain structures and different brain chemistry that, we can do the best that we can, but if that neuron's not firing or that neuron's not getting the signal, we might still be experiencing a lot of symptoms of, fill in the blank. So that is where, psychiatric medications can be really helpful in adjunction to this. Not being able to give specific medical advice, I think it's always worth if you have a provider, I think it's always worth talking with them. Some people, especially if you maybe don't feel comfortable trying out medications, right? This alone, right? Research has found that this stuff can be effective in enhancing connectedness and well-being, even if you're not on medication. But for some people, they might just also need that. I see medication as a tool potentially to help us be able to do this work. If I am always in a threatened state, if I just have a lot of symptoms and just my biology is turned off, it might be really hard to even get myself to go do this group. So medicine can help give us enough of a foundation to then do the work that it takes, because this is hard work.
Some tools for flexible control. What are some things that we?
Some tools for flexible control. Join our class. I wish I could give you a hands-on tool. I'm also, so like one of the things that we talk about in RO, and it comes up a lot of our groups, it's like, okay, I've identified this problem that I have, right? How you might refer to it. Now help me be able to fix it, right? Or how do I take the next step? Or give me a hands-on thing to walk away. And oftentimes we're in these groups, you're like, we're just giving you things to think about. So if you feel like you engage the world in a more, rigid way, again, you don't have to go be flexible across the board. But maybe think about in my important relationships, again, a lot of it is using your superior tolerance to say, all right, we'll do it your way this time, but really focusing on, I want the connection over it being my way. And if I can say, all right, let me hear this person out, where can I wiggle? Because that connection is important to me. Oftentimes that perspective can create a little bit of wiggle room. Good question. Yeah.
With the group, is it structured so you would have to start at the beginning of the group or?
Good question. So how is the group structured in terms of, do you have to start at the beginning or is it open, is it an open group? So it is an open group. So typically the commitment to the group is about 7 months. We are talking about our biology. We are talking about our temperament. We are talking about the way that we've been coping for a lot of our adult life. And, we're not going to be over controlled about, problem solving this. So it is a 7-month commitment, and there's 29 lessons. So you can join at any part in that rotation. So say you join on lesson 12, you'll go 12 to 29, we'll repeat back over 1 to 11. That also reinforces the idea that for a lot of people, when you start at 1 and you go to 29, and you're talking about things that were in lessons I weren't here for. How am I supposed to be good at this material if I miss what you're talking about? Oh, we're just gonna actually practice tolerating that. We're gonna choose to still engage with the group, even though you might not know what we're talking about, because it's not about being perfect and being right. It's about being willing to show up with your humanness and come out of that group, hopefully with 1 degree of change or 1 degree of perspective that you might take with you. So yeah, people can join anytime. What determines an open spot is just there being a group opening. We cap the groups at a certain number just to keep it an intimate environment. Okay, so we'll wear the time. I'm getting the signal. Thank you all for your openness, for your silliness, for your participation. If you have any questions, I'll be up here.